Well, in today's video we'll be working on building a desk. Planning on building a pretty sturdy large one that's about almost 3 feet, not quite 3 feet deep, by 5 feet. The one desk is going to be like a stand-up, so approximately this height, so that when I'm working I can type and stuff while standing, but then I can maybe have a drafting chair or something like that so I can go in between. If you've watched any amount of these whack-a-mole videos, you probably got an idea. I like to use reclaimed materials and reuse stuff as much as possible. In this case, I'm going to be using for the top 2x6s. Now these 2x6s were actually pulled from a platform that was getting demolished. So they're not in the best of shape, but some of them are great. This one here almost has like a live edge, if I can get it out. Yeah, let's try to take, some of these top ones have nails. A little bit of hazard. That definitely has nails in it. Apparently didn't get the nails out of that one. Really nailed it. Okay, turns out there's more nails in these than I thought, so I'm going to drive the nails out. Actually, I should get the pneumatic nail remover out so I don't have to drive by hand. That'd be smarter. I got the nails pulled out, and I only need 5 per tabletop, but of the ones I had pulled out, those were warped even worse than the ones here. These are relatively flat, except for this one. But there's still a little bit of play. Now it'd be nice to have some fancy equipment to try to make everything perfect. I have something that possibly would work for that, but I'm going to try to do it all by hand, using a hand planer or a sander. So I have a flat surface. My thought on this, if it all works, is I'm going to track the high points. Like I know the high point is right here on this one, but then on the opposite corner is high as well. So maybe I have to plane down that and try to take some of the warp out of it. This board is somewhat cupped, so I want to put the flat side down because that's going to be my top, and I'm going to glue this all together. There's nail holes, so I'm thinking about using it as character and filling the nail holes with sawdust and glue, so when I stain it, it will hopefully look pretty. But I'm going to swap the sides and I'm going to cut them flush, is my current thought. Then at the ends, I'm thinking about taking another piece of 2x6 and capping the ends, which would get me very close to 5 feet.
And so begins the arm workout. Hand planing time. So I need to get this sort of squared up and flattened before I can go to my other approach to help clean up this wood. But throughout this whole project, I will get quite an arm workout using this hand planer. Okay, I'm just checking to see how much of the cup I've removed. Okay, got the boards kind of to equal depth, but instead of using the hand planer like I was earlier, I ended up cheating and whipping out this. I think it's called a thickness planer. I actually was given this as a gift, so yeah, seemed to work pretty well.
I got one side pretty well flat going through the planer. So that's going to be the top. I'm going to put that facing down, like that. I actually still have some sort of warp, like this board is warped this way, which is far from ideal. So I'm going to have to try to plan around that. This one might be the worst warped on the back right here. So they don't rock back and forth now, which is really good. That one maybe does a tad, but they're a lot flatter, which is what I'm going for. So I did a test clamp up here. You can see I have some gaps still, even though I have a fair amount of pressure on it. So to join these boards up and get them fit tighter, I'm going to find the spots that have the biggest gap, and I'm going to leave those alone. I'm going to cheat. So instead of making the whole section perfectly straight, as some of these boards are warped more than the others, I am just going to take the areas that are butted up perfectly against each other, and I'm going to just remove a little bit of material with a hand planer. I think my arms want to find a shortcut, and this will be the shortcut I think I will take. Okay, it's a lot tighter now. I do have the clamps on it, but it's actually able to clamp up tight now. These are Harbor Freight clamps, by the way, if you're curious. I'm going to try and number each of these joints so that I can line them up right when it comes time to glue them. I'm actually going to number it, let's say, along here. I'm going to call this joint 1.
Time to start the glue up. While this is a Gorilla Glue bottle, I'm actually using Tight Bond 2, which I poured into the smaller bottle to save money. I spread the glue with a scrap piece of wood to ensure maximum coverage and strength of the joint. I'm using a variety of clamps just to make sure that the joint is nice and tight and strong. Pipe clamps to quick clamps to Harbor Freight bar clamps.
So I just got off work. I haven't even changed or anything. I got stuff I need to be doing afterwards. I don't have too much time to work on this. But I can't wait to flip this over and see how it turned out. You can see it's uneven right here. Apparently this board was bowed more, so I'm going to try to sand feather that out.
For the astute among us, I'm not using a sander, as you've probably noticed. I am actually using the hand planer. This actually worked really well to get a nice smooth surface, and as most of you are saying, surprise, who would have guessed it? Newsflash, that's what they're for. Now to finish up the ends, I'm cutting it so we have a nice straight edge, and now I need to also work on cutting and prepping the sideboards, for lack of better words, or terms, or names. You get the point, hopefully. Now for a sticky situation, more glue. I feel like all I was doing here was hand planing and gluing, but hey, the end result was definitely worth it. Sadly, I didn't have a clamp long enough to clamp the end pieces, so I just took 2 different clamps, as you see here, and I clamped them to themselves. It worked. It was definitely not the easiest approach, but if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have a long enough clamp, well, maybe you have 2 clamps that will work. I don't know if 3 would do it, though. Probably 3 would work as well. Let me know in the comments if you've ever tried more than 2 clamps. I'm also clamping the edge here because they would also have a tendency to lift up when I applied pressure with the clamp.
Okay, so I have this to the point that it's ready to be sanded. Yay. There are some imperfections. I filled them in with wood glue and sawdust. So hopefully it'll hold the stain well if I sand the top, which I probably will, just so I don't have like that golden pine look. I really don't want that look. Probably will do a darker stain, we'll see. Anyways, I gotta get to sanding. Time to break out the sander. I know, this is not the sander. It's the vacuum. So it turns out, I thought this had an adapter or could fit onto the vacuum. That may be a project for another video. I may be trying to make an adapter, a 3D printed adapter or something that go between these two. Anyways, now I just have to put the dust collection bag on this. Maybe I'll leave the vacuum next on top of the surface while I'm sanding to hopefully reduce the amount of dust I have flying around. Time to go over to the finer sandpaper. I'm going to leave my mask off for a short time, even though there's not much dust flying around. I just don't want to breathe it. So I'm going to swap out to a finer sanding pad. So this has probably been one of the oldest tricks in the book since there's been sawdust and wood glue and wood projects. Making your own wood filler out of sawdust and wood glue. Now the trick is not getting too much wood glue in there or too much sawdust, because you need just the right amount to bind everything together, but just enough sawdust to be able to give enough fiber for your stain to match the rest of your wood, because you want to use sawdust from nearby wood if possible. Yeah, there's probably neater ways than getting your fingers all dusty, but you could take like a putty knife or just wait and then sand it flat. Or you could be impatient and just take a scrap piece of wood and scrape off the excess like I did.
I'm doing something very similar to what you would usually use a jig for. I'm just eyeballing it and drilling it and reinforcing this joint with screws. It's probably overkill because the glue joint is very strong here, but hey, I was just trying to be extra sure that nothing would break as I would use this table slash desk for whatever I use it for. Now it's time to make the legs. I'm actually using some old walnut that I pulled from a pallet. This is quite a nice chunk of wood, 3x3, very solid. It's gonna make some super heavy but strong legs. Probably an overkill using walnut, but hey, it's nice. To reduce my arm workout, I'm using an old belt sander just to help get it closer to the finish, and now I am doing a finish pass with a hand planer. The hand planer creates quite a nice, smooth surface. Now I'm measuring because I'm going to be using a peg to go inside the joint, so I just want to make sure everything lines up right. This is a really heavy duty peg, so this joint will be very strong. Probably an overkill for this type of application, but hey, it'll make a good, sturdy, long-lasting piece of furniture. Now I'm drilling the hard way, as I got smarter right here as you see, and just put it against the tabletop and drilled down.
So basically I drilled a hole between here and here so that I can glue this pin in between these two to hold this cross member in place. Hopefully this will hold together well, even though I couldn't fit this piece in my drill press because it's just too tall. I should have drilled this one out with my drill press at least. But we'll make do with what I got, I guess. So I'm going to run the screw backwards for a second to help keep the wood from splitting out. Why does that work? Let me know in the comments. So the glue's had a chance to dry actually for a few days. The legs are finished and ready to be assembled. So I just need to take off all the clamps. There's the finished legs. In case you're wondering, this is the hardware I'll be using to attach the legs to the tabletop. Threaded inserts. I'll be actually putting 4 per leg, maybe an overkill, but hey, I think it'll work better. Some fender washers and some bolts. It's time to add these threaded inserts, and I actually added them to that side already. What I'll show you here though is I made a jig on my drill press. Those holes are pretty much perfectly square to the drill press. I know it's not a perfect setup, but that way I can at least try to get all my holes to align properly. So that when I use this to drill on the tabletop, I can use this to drill the holes through the legs as well, so hopefully everything will line up perfectly. It's now time to connect the legs to the table. So there's one leg on this side holding the tabletop up if you're wondering how in the world the tabletop's still standing. Okay, it's time to stain the table. I'll be using this stain. It's Carrington. Now I gotta put it on and then just kind of wipe it all off on one solid go.
I'm actually using water-based polyurethane here that was left over from a previous project, and I was actually pretty pleased with how it turned out. I usually use oil-based, but hey, it worked. I liked it. It was easier cleanup. Interesting thing about the water-based is it applies with sort of a milky appearance, and then it becomes translucent as it dries.
So here's the finished product. Desk, table, whatever you want to call it, turned out really nice. It's super sturdy and I am very pleased with it. The stain did a good job blending between the walnut legs and the pine top, and the polyurethane has worked great. I've actually had this in my office for a few weeks now, I think, and I'm very pleased with it. So it was actually a fun project. It was a lot of work, but hey, if you've been wanting to try something like this, I would highly suggest you just go ahead and give it a try. So make sure to subscribe and comment down below, and also a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated as well, and we'll see you in future videos.